Excellent. Thank you. Recording is started. Welcome all to our October Working Lands meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9:04. And first item on the agenda is the vote for the September 16th meeting minutes that were in your packet. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Alan.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have a second?
I'll second Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any corrections or comments?
I think I should abstain from voting because I missed it.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
This is David. I also missed the same meeting.
Thank you, David. All right, so we have 2 abstentions. Not hearing any comments or questions. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, nay. Motion shall carry. We will turn this over to Claire, who's going to walk us through the updated Working Lands website.
Yeah, and it's definitely Claire. I just wanted to say give a shout out to Claire for taking this on with and really stewarding a intern as well all summer long working on this project from the MidWorks project. I think Claire will talk about it. But this, like some of the other projects that we've been tackling, like the updated roadmap, improved data gathering, the website has been a really big, challenging project. And so I think what Claire is sharing with you today, we're really sharing it for feedback, but also with a lot of excitement and, from my perspective, with deep appreciation for Claire taking this on, because there's been a lot of learning, a lot of working with ADS, and a lot of just patience and persistence on Claire's part. This project really first started with Randall. Some of the board members remember when Randall was with ACCD. So that just gives you a perspective of, these things when working with websites that, need to meet a lot of criteria and have limited, I don't even know what really what the correct terminology is, but the state's website can do certain things and not other things. So I guess flexibility, there's a lot of layers of challenges. So thank you, Claire, very much for taking this on. And yeah, so excited that you're going to share this with the board today.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm in a conference room, so I never know if the technology is working as it is supposed to. Okay, so I've shared my screen. I'm just gonna do a brief walkthrough of the pages that have been updated. You might not remember what it looked like before. I think that's fine. I do have some pictures of what it looked like before. If you're very curious, I can share those with you. But yeah, like Elizabeth said, this has been a pretty ongoing project for me, basically since I started in this role almost 4 years ago, and we've made a lot of updates to the website. We are pretty limited in that we have a state template, and some of you may also know that the state is also working to comply with new federal accessibility requirements that go into effect in April of 2026. And so that's something I've also been learning about is digital accessibility. But the main goals of the website updates that we worked on this summer were refreshing all of our photos. A lot of those hadn't been updated since mid of 2022. And we were really focused on updating more of the storytelling side of the website. Some of you may know our website's kind of organized by this storytelling area, which focuses on history and impact, as well as the board piece. And then we have our grants pages. And then we've got this resource section. There's like a lot of updates that are planned that we'd love to make, especially to this resource section. We've made some initial updates to how some of these grant pages are organized. And we certainly have ideas for how they could be improved, but just want to preface that we were specifically focused on the storytelling piece. So the first kind of exciting update is our homepage. Some of you might remember before we had sort of a series of photo collages that was kind of like a workaround. So we're using the template as we're supposed to. So we've got this nice panoramic photo of this is Bread and Butter Farm, but we thought it was important to also have some forest in the background. We've got our updated mission and vision statement, and then we also have some impact, like some numbers on the front page, which we didn't have before. This news and blog on the side has stayed the same. And then before, like these kind of calls to action were just like sentences with links. So we are using the new widget function, or it's not a new function, but we're just using it appropriately to have folks either learn more about the impact or funded projects, or then if they are looking for grants, looking for either business grants or service provider grants. So these are some exciting updates, and yeah, these are all new photos with more recent grantees. We made sure to do a mix of both forestry and ag and different types of sectors. I think probably the most exciting page that's been updated is our program impact page, which before was just kind of like a sad list of links to our different impact reports. We've again got a nice photo here. This is Ellison Estate Vineyard in Grand Isle. So again, we've got some impact numbers right at the top. We added the table for the demand. This is in our impact report, so really highlighting the unmet need. We've got the link to our latest impact report over here on the side, and something I think is cool that we added is this like sidebar of different quotes from grantees from their reports. And again, we tried to do a mix of sectors and different parts of the state and different types of grants. So that's pretty exciting. This is just some background information about the types of grants. A lot of this is kind of copied from what our impact reports look like, but instead of having people like click into them, it's just here. So that's like this map is from our impact report. This one's cool that I guess we don't really have that much like extra information, but it is accessible rather than just like putting like a picture of a map, like a screen reader for someone that's using that. Can like the screen reader can like read the data to them, which is cool. And if you like hover over it, it tells you the name of the county if you're someone that's like looking at this and isn't as familiar with Vermont. And then we also added, the sector chart that is something else we have in our impact report, which is cool. I color coded it. It's like, this is by like sort of the specific sectors. The colors represent, the yellow ones are ag and the green one are forestry. And then we made maple its own thing. So yeah, and these will be very easy to update whenever we have the next round of grants. And then at the bottom here, we have links to some of our past impact reports, or all of the ones that we have available. So yeah, this is, I think, a much more exciting page to send the public to, or legislators to, than just a list of impact reports. So I think there's a lot more that we could put on here, but definitely don't want to overwhelm people with data. And I felt like this was a great start. And then the other pages that we updated are the history page. Again, mostly this was like new photos. And then, just like this was more just kind of simple layout stuff using these like button features that are a little nicer looking. I don't think the content on this page was really updated. And then the last one that we worked on was the vision and mission page, which many of you know that we worked on an updated mission and vision statement a couple of years ago. So those are up here, and we also have our strategies I think an ongoing goal for this page would be to link it more explicitly to the program impact and do more like data tracking that's online. But that's kind of a long-term goal. Yeah, and we really, I know like it's kind of like, oh, we updated the photos, but that definitely took a really long time to find. And I'm actually, I am going to replace this sawmill photo since there's not eye protection in use here. But we spent a while making sure that we have photos that represent different sectors, different geographies, different types of farming, different types of forestry businesses. And one of the main things that we had to do before really doing the website updates was reorganizing all of our photos, which Guled, the intern from Middlebury, that was one of the main projects that he worked on. And then he really spearheaded choosing the photos and organizing them and actually like putting them online, which was really great. And then I think the last thing that actually came out recently, we did show the coordinating committee these updates a couple months ago. We now have this nice alert at the top that is announcing that we have grants open now and when the due dates are. So as it gets closer, it can also change the alert so it's more like yellow or red, which is exciting. So yeah, I think those are the main updates. I think one of the next goals we have is updating our funded projects page, which right now, again, is a little bit challenging to navigate. I'd love for it to just be like a table that people can scroll through so you don't have to click into each of them, and also have that link more to, for example, our blog or the program impact. If you like see a grant that's listed and you want to learn more about it and we've got a story about it, to be able to look at that. So yeah, I think those are the main updates that I wanted to share. And as Elizabeth said, we are certainly open to feedback. I do appreciate, whenever anyone, like we've tried really hard to make sure that the photos we're using like represent like safety and like appropriate practices, but it is hard for me to know what all of those are for every sector that we serve. So I do appreciate if you ever see a photo that you don't feel like is something that represents best practices, you can always let me know. Since I do miss some. Yeah, I don't know, Elizabeth, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I think I just want to clarify that the invitation is for folks to, like, we've done a bit of a walkthrough now of the pages that have been updated. So if board members can at some point spend a minute or two looking at those pages and offer any suggestions. But the best way, we didn't think it was the best use of this like meeting to take individual suggestions into account. So the invitation is to email us the suggestions or the questions. As Claire said, we were able to do an earlier walkthrough with the coordinating committee, and they provided some very helpful feedback. Like Sarah pointed out that we had a picture of a bull behind one strand of barbed wire. She was like, that's not a good practice. So we changed that. It's now the Ellison Estate photo. Thanks to Liz's feedback, we now have those ribbons at the top that say what grant opportunities are open. So like really helpful feedback, impactful feedback. And I think, what happens for us is that like we look at it too much. It's like you can kind of get stuck in your rut. So having fresh eyes on the website is the invitation to, share feedback as you're able. I think certainly if anyone has like an immediate, a question or a comment right now, we can take it. But I think the invitation is more to visit the website and share your suggestions.
And then the last thing I'll note, this was a statewide update, so it's not really anything I can take credit for, but they now, the Google Translate feature is available on all state websites, including ours. So while we have not like been able to offer translation services like in depth for our program, folks can anyone that's on any state website can use Google Translate to translate the website.
So yeah, any immediate questions based on the sharing? And I actually think it's helpful to see that the funded projects page. Claire visited that last, and it was just that list of years with funded projects, and that was more along the lines of what the other pages looked like a lot of text, a lot of links. And so having seen that, I think it'll actually help you appreciate what it evolves into. And maybe helps you appreciate a little bit like what the homepage used to look like, with more of a long list of words and links, now having more widgets, photos, yeah, and more just data pulled out of reports, so people don't have to click in. I think those are some of the really key changes that have been made.
Overall, great job, Claire. Really so excited to see this overhaul. And yeah, the fresh photos are fantastic. It definitely feels a lot more user intuitive and user friendly. And so I'm looking forward to digging in. I'm really excited that you've got those visualizations of the data up there now. That is just huge. It's going to go such a long way with the legislators. So well
And actually,
done.
I meant to call out, that was another helpful feedback from the coordinating committee, was to put we didn't originally have the demand. We didn't originally have the dollars requested per year pulled out. So that was something else that the coordinating committee requested and Claire implemented. So another change that has, been made based on helpful feedback. So keep the feedback coming. That's the invitation. Yeah, and I think this is actually great. We're a little ahead of time, which I think is good. So now, I don't know if I paused. I think I paused long enough to get it. I don't think there's any questions on the website that I'm seeing or in the chat, right? Okay. So we're gonna now shift to a straw poll. About signs. So this is an idea that we have had to raise awareness about the breadth and the depth of the number of businesses that the Working Lands program has supported. We find that there's quite a bit of misconception amongst, where we see it is there's some misunderstanding with legislators around the true diversity of the businesses that the program supports. So both and I think that means location, the size of the business, the sector. And so, we think that having an actual visual representation at the businesses that have received grants could really help to raise awareness with the public, and also help capture the true diversity of businesses that the board, that the fund supports. Because as we know, we fund a huge diversity of businesses, both size, sector, and stage. So this would be, the business would opt in. So this is not this would not be required. It would not be required to hang a sign, but businesses who are interested would be offered a free sign. metal signs with vinyl print. The lifespan is at least 8 years and a lot longer if it's inside or if it's in a covered, like shadier location. And it would be a very simple sign. It would just say, this business received a grant from, or received grant funding from, and then it would be the logo, which says Vermont Working Lands Enterprise Initiative. And right now, our proposal is to survey grantees going back to FY22. There's a total of 103. And the budget table in the agenda, where you can see we're projecting that 70 businesses will opt in out of the 103. That's what the budget calculations are based on. So 70 of the 103 opting in. And then for this year's grantees, we're budgeting for 20 signs. So this budget, the total budget of 4,333 includes providing signs to grantees all the way back to FY22, and also includes signs for grantees for this fiscal year, this coming grant making period. It also includes the vendor shipping the signs directly to the grantee. So that's what you're seeing in the budget table. Allison, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why signage going forward isn't required. When I've worked with other grant funds before, I mean, the signage is a non-starter. So, what are the reasons that recipients would not want to have a sign?
So, and maybe I'll let actually the coordinating committee weigh in, because I actually was under a little bit more of the mentality that it should be required moving forward. But the coordinating committee felt strongly that it be optional. And I'm actually trying now, Ellen, Liz, Sarah, Oliver, can you guys remember? I'm actually trying to remember the rationale for wanting it to be optional. Liz, great. Thank you, Liz.
Sorry, I should not have raised my hand at that moment because I missed that conversation. So
Okay.
if someone else could speak to that specifically, I'll go after.
I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember.
I think my feeling was that some people are just very private about where they get their funding from, whether it be grants or loans or whatever. And just that respect for the, privacy if they prefer not to have a sign.
I would say because for the retroactive, it has to be optional because it wasn't written into the grant agreement. I think where it could become non-optional is if we put it in the grant agreement that it's, required to hang a sign. So going back, it's a the reason that has to be optional is because we didn't have that agreement in place. I think moving forward is where there's more, where there's space for it to become required. And I would say, I think the rationale that I remember that I think convinced me to be open to shifting my own opinion was just we want people to hang signs who are going to be good excited to represent the program, are excited to share about it, who are going to, we do not want to be in a position where somebody is feeling forced to do something and not feeling good about it, and therefore like isn't going to be a good representative to the program. I think that was the rationale that I remember. Like better to have people opt in, be excited to represent the program, be excited to talk about the program if people have questions based on the sign. Sarah and then Liz.
I'm actually fine with it. I do like the idea of the signs. I was just curious whether there are other state grant programs that require signs or offer signs, if you know. Just curious.
BCDP requires signage if it involves construction. So like at the Yellow Barn, I think the only grant funding source that didn't have a particular requirement was NBRC.
And I guess Working Lands, since we have grant funds there.
Right, but those were going to the tenants as
Okay,
well.
I
This
see,
was
not
for the
the-
shell. Yeah.
I
Liz?
think,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I
Or
was
Liz.
just gonna,
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Liz and then Elizabeth.
I was just gonna say I've seen both. I've seen a lot that don't require that signage and some that do. And I would say my reaction is if we're gonna do it, I definitely agree that it should be voluntary and that people like what you said, Elizabeth, about the good storytelling. And people access a lot of services and I think if every single one required them to put up a sign, it would be like pretty overwhelming. Um, so that's another reason to not have it be required.
Elizabeth Nance.
No,
and
I
then
was just
Claire.
gonna follow up with sort of what Allison said. I think most programs require some acknowledgement of that a project is funded by various sources, and typically those are construction. But like for equipment purchase, it's sort of hard to do that. And then the sign isn't permanent. It's as long as that construction period. And I do think, and I've sort of flip-flopped. I was pretty strong not to require it. Then I was like, let's make it a requirement. Now I'm back to making it voluntary because I think, particularly if they last 8 years, well, and I guess one thing we haven't talked about is, do they stay up into perpetuity or for 5 years, or is there some ending? Because they may be very supportive for the first year or 2 or 3, but then something may go sideways and then they may not be the best storytellers.
Mhm.
I guess I'll address that and then go to Claire. I mean, I think my thought is that if it's voluntary, they can also voluntarily take it down whenever they want. Right? It's like putting more decision making into the hand of the business owner to make the decision about when it needs to come down for, I think whatever reason, either deterioration or something has shifted in the business, or that would be my thought. And Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that the reason we first pursued this was because a grantee asked for it, not
Yeah.
because we were wanting to require something. A grantee specifically asked for a sign, and I do certainly hear from other grantees when they're done their project that they're like, what else can we do? Like, this is so great. We want to share about it. And so, yeah, again, I think for those folks that want to do it, I think offering them a sign is great. I just want to be super clear that this is something grantees have asked for and not just something we're wanting to come in and
Yeah, thanks for adding that to the origin of this project. Catherine.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I just wanted to mention that not all of our grantees have a business or a project that could really support a sign. I'm thinking of, in particular, like logging contractors where we funded a piece of mobile equipment. I don't know what the expectation would be for them. You know, would
We
they put the
weren't
sign on piece of
thinking that
equipment or
most
something?
people, even like, we wouldn't exclude anyone, and probably most of them have like a shed, or, you know, like they would still be able to opt in if they wanted. Like if they had a garage, they could put it on the garage.
Yeah, I guess it just doesn't seem like that would really meet the intent here. Like it's not like a farm shop where people are coming in and
Yes,
seeing
it
it
wouldn't.
in the same way. So I'm wondering if there's just to, I guess, maybe complicate things or throw out an idea, you could also have like a virtual version of the sign that people could put on their website or something as well. If it's just not possible or feasible, practical for them to put a physical sign out.
Elizabeth, you want to do a straw poll?
I think so.
Those
And I
that are
guess
supportive of the
the
signs.
last- okay, yep.
Look at the amount of it on your agenda, 4,333.50. For the cost of 70, correct? Or is that 90? Signs for
90.
90, excuse me.
Yeah.
And those that are supportive of it being voluntary, if you could raise your virtual hand or your real hand, that would be great. Thank you. And those that would like it to be mandatory, if you could raise your hand or your virtual hand. All right, so voluntary is pretty clear. Do you need an actual vote to allocate these funds?
I think if we're prepared to do an actual vote, it actually could be helpful. And it feels like there's not there's not like significant questions or anything that we have to go back to the drawing board on. So I think if we actually could do a full vote for the use of these funds, that would actually be really helpful, Allison.
All right, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve the signage printing in the amount of 4,333.50.
I'll make that
So
motion.
moved or seconded.
Excellent. So I have Elizabeth Nance and Alan. Are there further questions, comments? All right.
Sorry for this last minute question, just
No,
looking at
that's okay.
the budget for it, Elizabeth, it lists that the vendors will ship directly to folks at a cost. I see it's a pretty expensive cost. I assume you're only sending to people who have requested them. This won't get shown up, and if they don't want it, just.
Oh, right.
not
So
great.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're gonna survey, and then
Great.
only if you sign up. So the final, this is, I think it is important to say again, this is a projected. So
Yeah,
we don't know exactly what the response rate's gonna be. It could be less. We will not go above. Like we will
Thank you.
stick to this budget or less.
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Any other
thank you.
questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
those opposed, say nay or raise your hand. All right, motion carries.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you all. All right, and we are going to shift right into our next agenda item. We have two guests who have joined us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves after I give an overall introduction to the next topic. So the Farm and Forest Viability Network that is a statewide network of business advisors, both for the forestry and farm sectors, and housed within the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. Liz Gleason is the director, who has an ex officio seat on this board. So I think some of the newer board members may still be orienting to the board seats themselves. So I'm calling that out. But they are going to the network. Liz, Daniel from CAE and Sam Smith from the Intervale are going to take a few minutes to, well, I guess let me step back. I want to say that the Farm and Forest Viability Program, the network, is something that the board is an initiative that the board has funded year after year. And Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the beginning of the fund, or at least, yes. So since the beginning
it was always from the very beginning, marrying technical business assistance with grant making was considered strategy and critical to our mission.
Thanks. And that's exactly what I thought. So I think, yeah, they are a partner to the board, to the fund, that really allows the work, the vision of the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative to really strengthens our ability to execute the mission and the vision of a vibrant and sustainable working landscape. So they've been invited today to share a few things, an update on the network, some of the things that they're observing in the grant making landscape, so that the board is aware of some of the shifts and the impacts those are having on the network and businesses, and also to provide a grounding for the newer board members into the partnership and the work that we take on together. So I think without further ado, I want to pass it over to Liz, and then Liz, my thought is that we don't do introductions of every board member because we don't have a lot of time, but I am also happy if you feel like that's helpful to go ahead and do that. But I think it would be nice for, yeah.
Yeah, maybe folks could drop their info in the chat. I'm going to start us off by just giving a really brief program presentation that Sam and Daniel, I think, will be quite familiar with. So they can probably scroll through comments as I'm talking.
Can we let them introduce themselves, though? I think that would be.
Yes, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So, why don't we do that first, and then I'll sort of give an overview of how I think we're going to use the next 30 minutes and jump right in from there.
So the invitation is for every board member, if you could put your name and the seat that you represent in the chat. Thanks, Susie, for kicking us off.
Daniel, do you want to start? Yeah,
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the chance to chat with you and share our perspectives. My name's Daniel Keeney. I'm Farm and Food Business Specialist at the Center for an Agricultural Economy in Hardwick. And since the start of my work there, my primary focus has been providing farm viability services through the program. Although we do a lot of advising to food businesses who use the food hub that we manage, the Vermont Food Venture Center, as well. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Sam Smith. I'm the Farm Business Director at the Intervale Center based out of Burlington. I've been providing direct technical assistance to farmers for the past 13 years. Almost entirely through the funding of the Vermont Farm and Forest Viability Program. And I'll talk a little bit more about our broader business planning programs after Liz's presentation. Thanks for having me here, though.
Thanks so much to both of you for doing this together. I think I mostly know everyone on this board, but I'll introduce myself too, just in case. Liz Gleason, I'm the program director for the statewide Farm and Forest Viability Program, and I sort of coordinate our network of partners, which includes Daniel's team, Sam's team, and several other organizations that I'll go through in a minute. And I do have a few slides. I'm going to start off by just doing a brief program overview with some of those slides that show what this program is and the impact, because the last time we did that was about 2 years ago, and there's a bunch of new board members. So it'll be new info for some, old info for others. Please jump in if you have any questions at any point. And then Daniel and Sam and I will just sort of have a conversation about both the services we offer, answering questions you have, but also the impacts that we're seeing due to federal funding cuts, what that means for businesses on the ground, what that means for our programs and sort of our network's ability to meet demand, and just have sort of a free-flowing conversation at the end. But I have about probably 5 to 10 minutes of slides, depending on whether people ask me any questions. Great. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. All right. So the Farm and Forest Viability Program was established by the Vermont legislature about 24-ish years ago. We're part of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And the reason for that is because the Housing and Conservation Board had been conserving a lot of agricultural land for about 15 years at that point, and we realized that was a powerful tool, but we really needed more tools to be able to support farmers. So we started this business planning program. The goal of it is really around increasing management skills of all kinds of farmers and forest products businesses. So as you all know, many people go into farming or forest products because they love the production, they love being outside, they love being in the woods, they love growing things. They don't do it because they really love business management. And the industries that these folks are in are really tight, and being able to really maximize their skill set, run their businesses as effectively as possible is a really important part of overall success. So we provide a really wide range of business planning services to a really wide range of businesses, small, big, dairies, organic, conventional, loggers, sawmills, flower farmers, diversified livestock. It's all over the place. For the most part, we focus on people who are at a somewhat commercial scale, usually around 15,000 in sales or a little bit more, up to several $1-million businesses. And we generally work with folks who have been in business for at least a couple of years, so they have an understanding of what the constraints and opportunities are. They have some records to work with, and we really focus a lot on the sort of understanding of the financials and helping people improve those skills. We do a lot of work around goal setting, so you'll see a lot of my language here is around sort of the traditional economic indicators of success, jobs, profitability, etc. We really do, as a program, see success as really holistic, that it's not just about the money, it's about your personal goals, your goals for the business, for the land, your community, and that's definitely built in as well. Just to give you all a sense of scale, there's about 15 different business planners across the state that are funded. At least part of their job, if not more like most of their job, is funded through the Farm and Forest Viability Program. And collectively, those 15 people through our program stream are working with between 150 and 200 plus businesses a year. Around 100 of those are usually more like in-depth and intensive during that year. So that's that third bullet point that you see right here, around 108 businesses. those 15 people also have other parts of their role that provide really critical services in the food system. So like Daniel mentioned, his team is also providing a lot of support to small scale food businesses, folks that are using the facilities at CAE and other people. So it's a very network-based approach, and all those 15 people are bringing a really wide range of skill sets and helping direct people to the right set of services at the right time. And we find it to be just a really supportive network, both of each other and of businesses in the state. We do a lot of work around increasing profitability, since most of the businesses we work with are small scale or sort of family or multifamily scale. That's really important that they're able to pay themselves well and pay their employees. So we spend a lot of time on profitability. We just ran the numbers on the past 5 years of the program, and the average increase in profitability per client was around $18,000. So we consider that to be, and that includes people who might be losing money. And so as an average, we're feeling pretty happy with that, and we'll be tracking it over time to see if it's feasible to even increase that. Let's see. Just a couple other examples. We track a lot around improved business management skills, increased sales, access to other grants and loans. A lot of people are coming to us at times of sort of business transition. Either they're growing, or they're streamlining, or they need to add a new enterprise, or they need to transition to the business to the next generation, or sell the business to a new farm. So being able to access capital is pretty critical. Last year, clients we were working with accessed over $5.5 million in grants and loans, and that's about our average over the last 5 years too. So we work really closely with lenders to help people prep for that and be in a really good position to be able to effectively access capital at the right time for the right projects. And like I mentioned, this is a network-based program. We call it sort of a collaborative program model. At the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, we have a team of 5 people that manage this program and 3 other program areas that are sort of our sister programs that I'll talk about really briefly at the end, more like teasers. So we provide sort of the administrative structure, funding, policies. We enroll all the clients in the program, and then we work with everyone on this page to deliver those services on the ground. So all of these organizations have built out really exceptional skills and ability to deliver really, really effective business support on the ground. Our primary partners that we've been working with for a long time are here on the left. And then we also think it's really critical to have a pipeline of different kinds of business assistance at different times. So we fund a handful of other organizations that do sort of complementary business development work, and those are down here, but these folks are not necessarily enrolling people in our program model, but we're working together on this sort of constellation of services that businesses need. We focus a lot on farmland access, farm succession. I'm not going to go into detail, but I just want you to know that that's like hugely on our mind and a really big part of our program. A little bit of information on the kinds of forest businesses we work with. This was last year, and you can see it's really across the spectrum: woodworking, logging, small mills, maple. I'm not sure if this includes just sap or any maple business, but we work with multiple scales and types of maple. I'm realizing that I'm taking more time than I wanted to, so I'm going to quickly say that we also run 2 grant programs. We have an implementation grant program for folks who have recently finished their business plan or their succession plan, and those are small, targeted, no-match grants to implement key parts of their plan. So we do that almost every year and have been for about 15 years, and they really are sort of specific projects that help grow or make a really important change that they've worked on with their business planner. And down here are a couple of pictures of those. We're also charged by the state with managing some water quality improvement grant money. So we have a separate $600,000 a year program, sometimes a little bit more, to implement key water quality improvements. And those are a little bit bigger. Those are up to $50,000. So between implementation grants and water quality grants, we put out about almost $6 million over many years of this programming. And do I want to say anything else about that? I think it's just important to share those as examples of there's a lot of different grant programs in the state, and we try to be really clear about what's a good fit for people at the right time. So if you have any questions about any of those grants, feel free to reach out. And then my teaser, I'm just really truly going to tease this. We have a sister program called the Rural Economic Development Initiative, which works with small communities and working lands businesses to help them access complex, usually federal dollars. So anything from helping a farm apply for a value-added producer grant to helping a small community do like a wastewater infrastructure development. So it's all over in that. Please reach out if you have any businesses or communities that you think could be a good fit for that program. We'd love to help. All right, I'm gonna stop screen sharing. I'm sorry that my camera is off. I really think I need a new computer because no matter how many times I update it, the camera won't work anymore. But I'm here. I wish you could see me smiling. I'm really happy to be having this conversation. I'm also feeling a little just worried and frustrated about the world right now and our ability to meet the needs of working lands businesses. I personally believe that like access to nature, access to food are like basic human rights, and we really need to support the people who are helping make that happen in our state. And the reason Elizabeth invited Daniel and Sam and me here was to both give a reminder on what this program does, but also talk about how that's hard right now, both in terms of the overall context in the market, and also a lot of the nonprofits that we work with are losing access to funding that will that helps them meet that demand. Right now, state funding is still fairly strong for the viability program, so we're not looking at a precipitous cliff right yet. And as many of us know, that cliff may be coming. So we just wanted to kind of have a big conversation with all of you about that. So I'm going to stop talking. And I want to see Sam and Daniel, is there anything you want to add to this? And again, if there's any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand.
I can add some stuff, Liz. Yeah, so, you know, I've been in my role for 13 years now. You know, we have grown our program over those 13 years. When I initially started, the Farm Viability Program was our only funding source. And we were serving around 20 to 25 farms a year. We now have 3 other full-time business planners on staff, and we serve between 120 and 150 farms a year. And of those, last year, 35 were farm viability farms. This year will be more like 70. We serve farms from concept to exit. So that means anybody from someone who is considering starting a farm up to I work primarily on large to mid-scale business planning for value-added food products, and also transfer planning. And transfer planning is becoming more and more of a concern in our agricultural landscape as we see aging farmer population, a non-replicable farming model in terms of the small to mid-scale dairies that were viable when I started are no longer viable. And I think the agency has it pegged at about 750 milkers as being the break-even point for a dairy farm at this point in the state. And then our farming clientele are really facing relatively unstable conditions like Liz was talking about. And I think our presence there has really shifted over the years from focusing on long-term planning to moving more to a model of developing out their business management skills so they can navigate this really challenging economic time in a way that's allowing them to adapt quickly to the economic environment. I'd just like to say that the farm viability funding has provided us with a core that allowed me to build up a team of really highly qualified business planners. And I think we provide a service to the clients that a lot of them are working lands applicants and recipients. We've also received working lands funds over the years for various projects or for services provided to those clients. And I think, we're seeing a really challenging time for our farms here in the state with climate change and economic instability, and developing out those muscles so that they can be able to adapt and pivot and grow these diversified farm businesses that are really at the heart of our rural economic communities is ever more important. So I'm happy to answer questions. Daniel, you have anything you want to add?
Not a lot. I would just emphasize this concept of unstable conditions and say more and more in our planning. And I haven't been doing it as long as Sam, but I have been doing it for 10 years now. And more and more risk mitigation becomes a central focus of the advising we do. And risk mitigation, what it looks like, is, helping a business's sort of a farm's business dashboard, instead of checking conditions, checking financial health once a year when you pull all the receipts out of the shoebox and send them to the tax preparer, actually month by month understanding what you're facing, whether production is improving or you're losing efficiency, whether repairs are sneaking up. Climate change resilience is a huge element of the risk mitigation. Grant opportunities is another opportunity, is another factor in risk mitigation. So really, we're helping these farms navigate both challenges and opportunities, and do it in a more real-time sense than the.
Oh no, Daniel, you froze. Can you hear us? Okay, while we're seeing if Daniel returns, I also just wanted to say I was at an event last week with a bunch of people working in ag business development across the Northeast, and like Daniel and Sam's work and their teams are like the envy of that community. So I just wanted to give them a big shout out too, and really appreciated working with both of you for so long. Daniel, you did freeze in the middle. Do you want to try to finish up your comment?
I'm not sure what was missed, but I think that risk mitigation just has a lot of different dimensions for the farms we work with, and it becomes a focus of our work. And the business management skills that the process model farm viability has developed allows us to teach to the farms we work with is an essential tool for them.
Any questions on what we've laid out so far?
I have a question, and we can, maybe if there are other questions, people can drop them in the chat, and I'm happy to table this one. But, I think one thing that, as we were talking about having this conversation is just like also really inviting you three to offer suggestions to the board, like, you know, maybe not immediate suggestions, but like, what are the things that you think the board should be thinking about, should be reflecting upon, you know, knowing in the midst of these unstable conditions, in the midst of more of a need for more advising around risk mitigation, in the midst of, you know, these unstable economic times. So just like any specific questions or reflections that you want the board to take up, or I would say even kind of preparedness, you know, things that you all think that the board should be really thinking about to prepare for these, you know, next few years of instability.
I'm happy to speak to that. You know, I spoke about it earlier, but I think the primary thing that I think the board, well, there are a couple things I think the board should consider. One is around the real importance of continued diversification in our agricultural landscape. And within that, the focus on direct market local food economies. I think wholesale models work at a certain scale, and we should still really work with those folks, especially the folks who are doing value-added enterprises as part of their farm and focusing on regional or national distribution. But the circular nature of the dollars from direct market products and the higher margins that the farms recognize really mean that focusing on developing out those local diversified businesses is really important. And the skill set that's required to do that is much more intensive than, say, running a you know, one of those historic commodity dairies where you didn't need to understand how to do marketing because your milk was going onto a truck. And it's not to minimize those type of farms. Like they do a wonderful job, and the majority of our dairies do a wonderful job, but it's a very different business skill set that's required of the farmer to grow a small diversified direct market business. And so that's what our programs do. A lot of times that building of business management skills may not seem like the most innovative thing, but the team that I work with, they're really providing these services that, and the farm viability team, like where we address all these core aspects of the business and help those producers move along the spectrum to become successful local businesses. And the scale of those businesses, the economics may be, you know, dramatically different, but a lot of times the impact is relatively similar. So just because a business is a small owner-operator business doesn't mean that it's not having a really outsized economic impact on the community where it is. We see a lot of farms in those owner-operator realms that they're grossing like a couple $100,000, but every single dollar that's going on in that farm is circulating within the local economy over and over again. They're employing a group of local people. Often they're actually pretty profitable and are taking home a comparable salary to what they would be doing in a 9-to-5 job somewhere else. And that really like forms the heart of a lot of our local rural communities right now, and even some of the more peri-urban ones that we have. So it really is, though, it's for me, it's like shifting the mindset. And I can give an example. Like I'm working with a former dairy. They sold their cows a few years ago. They were milking 120 cows, and the economics just didn't work for them. They've really struggled in the years since then. And now I'm working with the two sons who are hopefully going to take over the farm. And they've started up a maple enterprise, and we're really trying to figure out, all four, the husband and wife and their two sons are all working off the farm right now. They are very much in a shoebox in terms of their receipts. And the goal is to have those sons do a business plan, develop out that capacity in business management to be able to develop an enterprise where one or more of them could work on farm full time and continue that family legacy and hold on to the farm. So that's a really common scenario that we're seeing right now. But they're not going to be able to do it through milking cows anymore. They have, they have a beef herd. The maple's going to be a part of it, but that wholesale maple, they need to move into a direct market in some way or a higher margin market to be able to make it worthwhile for the son to be on farm full time. Dan, you have other stuff you want to add, or Liz?
Risk mitigation is a big one again. I mean, I think that concept of diversification is so critical. One of my favorite, I don't know about I wouldn't call it a favorite stat, but Vermont is more dependent on a single ag commodity than any other state in the union, dairy, and that's a vulnerability on a macro level that you have to mitigate. And that's shifting in some ways, but in other ways it's becoming worse because it's all that dairy farmland is in the hands of fewer businesses as dairy gets consolidated. So that diversification Sam was talking about is super important, and that's setting aside the importance of all the service businesses and vendors that farms rely on and lose as ag and farmland becomes more consolidated. I guess the other piece I would mention is an important thing to remember is aligning might not be the right word, but keeping in mind and considering all the externalities, the external benefits that farms provide to the working landscape, the tourism economy, et cetera. We talk about from time to time ecosystem services and the natural lands maintained by farms. I think, I'm reminded of my coworker Celine before she joined CAE, did this campaign when she was at the conservation district up in Lamoille County, and they put out signs, "Thank our farmers for the view," which is sort of a simple concept, but often forgotten. Like when you drive down the road, it really is, it's a credit to farms that we have as much open land as we do in Vermont. And all those things they're not necessarily monetized, and I'm not suggesting that they always should be, but it's something that the farmers do that they don't necessarily get a return for. And they get credit, but in sort of an inconsistent fashion. And I think it's important to keep that front of mind when we're working on farm policy and supporting this economy.
Any other questions, comments? Ellen or Sarah, we've been working together closely for a long time. Anything you want to add?
I will just say that one of the things that I've been really impressed with what Liz has brought to the Farm Viability Network is a real interest and desire and execution of providing professional development training to the service providers over time, getting them together in person, having outside folks come in and do training as a way of continuously improving the skills and experience of the service providers, I think is really fantastic. We had the opportunity to, at the Stable Jobs Fund with our coaching program, to provide 2 days worth of training on 5 different topics, for instance, recently. And it was great to see the depth of experience, the quality of the questions, the way that the service providers, like their curiosity and interest in being able to continuously hone their craft and being able to work with a very wide range of farm and forest businesses in the state. I mean, we're really, really lucky. And when I talk about this program with my counterparts in the other 5 states, like there's just no other program in the region that compares to that has been built up through VHCB's program over time. And it's a real shame because in order to achieve some of our production and consumption goals, we really need more land and agricultural production. And to do that, we need good, high quality owner operators that really know their stuff and are able to reach markets that, in a wide range of markets. So this is just so central to our ability to strengthen our food system that it's like, if it were ever to be at risk, this is not just a program that we would like, oh, well, this program, we can't do it. Oh, well, this is like so core and central to our ability to strengthen Vermont's food system and to support the evolution of the forest products industry in the state. How's that for an infomercial?
That was really good, Ellen. I think you really do an amazing summary. Trevor and then Sarah. And then that will probably be at time, depending on what the questions and comments are.
Yeah, this may be like too heady and existential, but Sam, you talked about the need to support more of these direct market opportunities. And I think there's a narrative out there that I've seen in different places around like saturation. A lot of those direct market channels, you look at the New England Feeding New England report, and Vermont is like head and shoulders above other New England states in the amount of local food that consumers are purchasing. And I think it's driven a lot of decision making in like the funding and TA space around, we need to develop these like wholesale market channels. We need to get into these major metro markets, because the assumption, I think, as I understand it, has been like, we just can't keep selling more food to our neighbors. Like, we're kind of hitting a tipping point there where like we're doing a lot of that, statistically much more than that than other states. I'm wondering if like how that sits with you, if that still like feels like that's an honest assessment, or if like you feel like there still is a lot more room in these direct market channels, and how, because I think again, this is like really foundational to how we think about like strategic investments in these spaces.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that. Yeah, so I'll share a little anecdote. When we used to have our farm incubator program at the Intervale, part of our process was to have a farm write a business plan if they wanted to become an incubator farm, and then we would run that in front of a panel of farmers in the Intervale. And we had an application from a CSA veggie farmer, and we thought it was going to be a non-starter. And the farmers, all of them were like, we need more CSAs. We need more people down here. If they do a better job than us, then we have to adapt. I think there are elements of some market saturation in pockets of the state, but I think overall what we see, and this is sort of that process of building the business management skills, is our hope is we get to producers very early on in their process so they can develop out a business plan that addresses that market saturation if there is some in that area, and then develop the skills to be able to access those markets. So like actually I worked with a Working Lands recipient last year who got funding for a green beans harvester. He had worked on a larger commercial vegetable farm, and that piece of equipment was his entree into be able to serve wholesale markets for this product that's really hard to produce on a larger scale. And it's one that, he wanted to get into the Deep Root Cooperative, and he was not going to be able to do that harvesting green beans by hand, but by purchasing this piece of equipment, it allowed him to get into Deep Root and some of the other local co-ops where they don't have that product on the shelves, or a local product, because the price point is so high. So I do think it's through that process of business planning that we help people identify sort of where there are those market gaps. And then if there is competition, they may choose not to go into business. And that's also a success from my perspective. I'd much rather do that through the planning process than have them spend a few years in business. And some of them do, but just sort of go into it blind and not, I would say fail catastrophically as opposed to failing in a spreadsheet 2 years earlier. So that's our goal. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Sarah,
Sarah?
did you have something?
So as a lender, we consider the Farm Viability Program in both CAE and the Intervale to be some of our strongest partners. And we really rely oftentimes on the business plans that are refined or developed there. And sometimes it's really what's really critical, especially for like a beginning farmer who maybe doesn't really know all the aspects to look at to determine whether they have a, feasible plan. But also for established farms who might be struggling or trying to figure out, well, maybe an exit plan, but also maybe they're trying to diversify and don't really know what all the different considerations are. So we have the utmost respect for the program and for including the individuals who are on here today. So thank you very much.
All right. So I want to flag for everyone that Tyler put a really good question in the chat and Liz responded in the chat. And I want to thank Sam and Dan and Liz for all of the work that you do, and for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, please reach out if you have any questions for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz, do you see why 15 minutes would never have been enough? I made the mindful decision. One, Kathy isn't with us, and Claire and I are happy to hold our highlights for the next board meeting. We're going to try to highlights from site visits are going to be a regular part of board meetings as board members are executing their site visits. So today we're going to prioritize updates from Ellen and from Stephanie and Allison. So you will each have 10 minutes. So it could be, I think it would be great, to introduce the site visit, and then let's leave some time for questions and conversation. Elizabeth, do you have a question right off?
Well, I did one last Thursday. I'm happy to wait till the next board meeting, but just an FYI, I did a site visit on Thursday.
Yes, great. And so once a site visit is completed, if you can email Claire and I and let us know, that way we will make sure you're on the agenda, and because we want all board members who do site visits to provide high level highlights. All right, Ellen, do you mind kicking us off with your site visit to the Vermont State College Meat Processing Facility and Training Program? And I also am tagging you for any important updates from the Working Lands Coalition that you think the board should just be aware of.
Sure. Yes, so middle of September, I went down to VTSU campus in Randolph. Those of you who've been around on the board know that several years ago now, we provided $250,000 to help fund a meat processing and training facility on campus. It's in a building that was existing. It just got refitted up to be a really state-of-the-art meat processing facility for the purpose of training and teaching meat cutters and farmers and anybody interested in learning about meat cutting. It is known now as the 1787 Butchery. It's been branded as such. It is 1787, I believe, is when VTSU Randolph campus was first opened. So it's an ode back to the very beginning of that campus, before it was Vermont State University, of course. The facility is spotless. because it's totally new.
Mhm.
It is they have all sorts of equipment and a setup that really maximizes the training potential of those who go through the whatever program that they're going to be offering, whether that's a standalone one-day workshop or what is currently in the works, which will be they have submitted to the state college system to create a three-phased certificate program that will be credit bearing. Maybe I'll just talk about these. Whoa. Can you back up and not do such a quick slideshow here?
Sorry, I was trying to find the ones of the interior and then work my way backwards. Is that
okay,
better?
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll
There we go. This one.
Yes. All right. Sorry. So I'll just say that what Demetris Reed, who is this amazing fellow here, he's on staff at VTSU Randolph. He's been hired as part of the Center for Agriculture and Food Entrepreneurship. He comes from West Texas, 7th or 8th generation cattle farmer family and barbecue aficionado. Amazing barbecue man. He actually lives in West Rutland, and his wife works for NRCS. And he has an on-the-road barbecue that he takes to various farmers markets when he's not doing the work at VTSU, and it's just amazing. So you ever get a chance, do have it. He's got a PhD in meat science. He is extremely amazing at explaining things. So this is a brand new bandsaw that will be used to cut carcasses. So this is not a slaughter facility. This is a meat processing facility. So carcasses will come from other places that, for instance, that Royal Butcher down the road to be used for training purposes. So go to the next one. This is a grinder that allows for different grinds so that you can make sausages and of various kinds. Go ahead. Vacuum sealer to be able to package up the meat and learn how to do that with all the food safety required. Go ahead. This is the training facility. So you'll see, if you look at the ceiling kind of in the middle of the picture, there is a camera that is mounted on the ceiling. And so as Demetris or others are cutting and showing people how to butcher various types of animals, that camera will catch that and it will show on the screen so that remote learning can also take place. So it's fully wired to the internet and will allow for asynchronous learning, creating videos, as well as having remote learning taking place in a synchronous way. All stainless steel tables, the walls are all washable, all up to food safety standards, brand new drainage system for water. The unit that's across the way there, that big silver box or stainless steel box, is the smoker that is set up, and to the left of that, the little unit is the actual place where all of the wood chips are added that slowly smokes, is slowly heated so that it creates smoke that then happens inside the big box there. Go ahead to the next one. This is the cooler where the carcasses will come in, and any meat that's been processed and needs to be stored will be in there. They need to get shelving units in there, proper shelving units, but otherwise the cooler is there on site. Go ahead.
Oh, that's different.
Maybe flip back.
Yeah,
there was a nice picture of the smoker at the very beginning there. So this was I attended, they were having a picnic to showcase some of the meat. So there was pulled pork and beef brisket that was fed about 100 students on a Wednesday afternoon. Go ahead to the next. And this is the smoker and Demetrius just showing off some of the beef brisket he's got in there, smoking up and curing up. They'll also be able to do meat curing, charcuterie as well, teaching all facets, beef, lamb, hogs, to be able to train up people so that they can then have more skill to be able to enter the meat processing industry, working at slaughter and meat processing facilities. I think that's good, Claire. Thanks. So as I mentioned, they're in the process of getting approval for a 3-phased certificate program. Each will be about 24 credits. So if somebody actually goes through and gets all 3 phases, they would have, in essence, an associate's degree in meat processing. One of the things I just actually learned today is that they'll be able to offer the courses at much less expense now that they have their own facility, because they had been partnering with Roma Butchers down in Royalton, and so they had to pay for the facility and pay for her time. And so now doing all of this in-house will be a lot less expensive. And the other exciting thing that just happened on Friday was that they were awarded a Kendall Foundation Food System Prize, Food Vision Prize, which will $100,000, which will enable them to buy a refrigerated truck along with Sodexo, because Sodexo is on that campus as well as the other State College campuses. And so what's been needed is a truck that will be able to take the carcasses from the slaughter facilities to the meat processing butchery and then get distributed out to the 5 campuses dining services as finished product. So very exciting that that investment is a follow-on. This was about $1 million, $1.1 million in total cost. The state legislature put in $287,000. There was some COVID era funds, I believe, that went into it. There was some EDA funds that went into it. So it was a pulling together of multiple funding streams, but literally without the WLEB funding, it would not have happened. So I think this is going to really pay off, because this is not only a long-term investment in a facility, but it has this ripple effect of it will be training up so many people in meat butchery over time. And Demetrius also has developed a relationship with at the A&R in their Vermont Wildlife Division to be able to get carcasses from roadkill, like when it has just happened, and be able to butcher that up and then get that out into the charitable food system. So very exciting to have that as an opportunity. Demetrius is just amazing. So it's been a really amazing to watch the evolution of the facility and how it's come online, and just think it's going to be such an asset to the state and to our slaughter and meat processing facilities, but also be a magnet for people who wanting to get into the field from across the region, because this is not just going to be attracting just Vermonters, but seeing this as really a regional piece of infrastructure for the whole meat industry it's going to be terrific. So courses and workshops are starting up now that the facility is done. And you'll be hearing a lot more about it, I'm sure. And if you're interested in meat cutting, sign up.
Great overview, Ellen. Thank you so much for representing Working Lands at the barbecue. That hopefully you got to try all the delicious.
Oh yeah.
meats.
And Demetrius has met my wife, and he packaged up she really likes the ribs. And so he had already prepackaged up this bundle of ribs for me to take home to her. So he's just an amazing human being.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting. And I would say that it's taken some patience and flexibility on the the side of the board, and I think it's a good example of sometimes we invest in a project where the work plan shifts pretty significantly and we stick with it and it pays off. Our flexibility pays off in the end. It ends up being very valuable too.
Exactly, Elizabeth. And part of this, of course, the reason for a lot of the delays was because of the merger that was going on in the state college system. Everything got so delayed. So it was many things that were really out of their control.
But I guess I'm really calling that out for new board members also, is that I think it's a unique aspect of the Working Lands Fund is that we do have flexibility once a grant has made to work with grantees, as work plans shift. We don't, promote that wildly externally, but it's a pretty key factor to making this program, I think, very user-friendly for grantees. All right, so we are gonna.
I'll just update on the Working Lands Coalition. So the coalition has reinvigorated. We have been meeting monthly, and the coalition is going to be contracting again with action circles to help us to navigate the legislative appropriations process. As I think I mentioned previously, the coalition is going to be advocating for a $500,000 increase in the base funding for Working Lands Enterprise Initiative from $1 million to $1.5 million, and is going to be advocating for a $3.5 million one-time appropriation to get the board to get the fund up to $5 million for fiscal year 27. So no idea if that's going to transpire, but that's what the group is going to be working on.
And Ellen, my thought was that you hadn't yet shared that with the full board, but you had with the coordinating committee, and I could be wrong. So
that's entirely possible. So the coalition developed a letter that all of the coalition members unanimously signed on to, that was sent to Secretary Tebbets requesting that the agency put that $5 million request into their request to the governor and include the letter as part of the justification. And then we were able to simultaneously get Commissioner Fitzgo from FP&R and Secretary Curley from ACCD to put in similar letters to the agency so that we are a united front in the request for how important these funds are. So we'll keep you all posted. There will be a time when board members maybe could, in your own personal way, not representing the board, but in your own personal realm, be able to talk with legislators and just help people understand the importance of this program, because as you all know, there's been a big changeover in the legislators, sort of who's on the various committees. The ag committees in both House and Senate have had major changeovers, new chairs. While we have some strong ambassadors and advocates on the House side, the Senate is less aware of the Working Lands Enterprise Fund. And Elizabeth and the team did a great job this past year, last session, educating folks and bringing in grantees. But still, it's the depth of the commitment to this program has waned with it just naturally, because we have a totally new group of people, and most of them, almost hardly any of them, right, Allison, were even around when the program got started. And so we don't have the champions like we used to. And that's something that the coalition wants to work on rebuilding.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, there are not many from when it first started. I can think of less than a handful.
And Allison and Stephanie, I want to hand it right over to you two for an update on your visit to the Vermont Livestock Slaughter and Processing Facility.
Excellent. Thank you. Stephanie's on a new computer. And so I'm not certain if she's able to get her camera and such going. I will start us off. I'm sharing some photos of the processing room. Carl Cushing is the owner of Vermont Livestock and Slaughter in Ferrisburg. Carl also, if you wish to know more about Carl, he was on the super senior, I think last year for WCAX. Amazing individual and well accomplished, very knowledgeable.
And he used to
Carl-
work at the Agency of Agriculture.
He used to work at the Agency of Agriculture. If one were to guess, Carl's probably pushing the upwards of 60s, early 70s. And he still works very hard every day. He's very passionate about what they've done here at the facility, and I can certainly see why. This upgrade was assisted by other grant opportunities. They received a $1 million federal grant. They received 100,000 from Working Lands towards the restoration of the facility. It was a 12,000 square foot expansion that began, I want to say a few, 2 if not 3 years ago. The first phase was to build a hoop barn to keep the animals prior to going into the slaughter facility. And the next phase was what you're looking at, the slaughter floor. And then also their cooling area to expand and modernize their new cooler and freezer panels. Carl's very proud of the rail system built in this slaughter facility. It is all gravity fed. It's interesting too with the tools. You can see Carl, who has made everything handicap accessible in the building. Carl also can do the work by the way that it was built. He has his saws and all the instruments, so they are literally assisted by gravity. They're all on retractable cables, etc. So I think this one saw weighed like 80 pounds. I actually picked it up. It's not a lightweight piece of equipment, but because of the way that it's set up in there, Carl boasts that his laborers do not tire as easy because it's so ergonomically and just correct physically for them to work in the facility. This is just another picture from down below. Stephanie and I were up above in this photo looking down from a different view on a second floor. And then this is actually in the facility on the ground level. And then the processing room, same thing. You can see that, they can adjust the height of the product that they're working on. So they don't tire as easy. They don't have to spend time lifting and manipulating the process that the piece of meat that they're working on. And then also this is like the finish table where they package it. I neglected to take pictures of the hoop barn and the cooling. I mentioned there was a 3-phase system here. They also, as another phase, built out a solar project, which is helped significantly with their electric bills, their electric use, and made it, and also they've made the plant more efficient too, with their envelope, which has helped them expense-wise too on electricity. Carl talked about the current situation of beef and the fact that farms right now are getting, over $1,000 for 5-day-old animals, and therefore not holding on to them, but rather selling them, many of which are going out of state. And therefore, less need for his services. So he's hoping that this will not be the case, for months to come, and that they do start seeing folks in state raising more of these beef cattle that are heading out at a young age. Trying to think, Stephanie, am I missing anything?
No, I'll just jump in. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, my computer. I'll figure it out for next time. So I hadn't gone there. We went there during COVID to get some animals process. And when I drove up, I didn't even think I was in the same place. And I think Allison, I said that to you. I was like, I wouldn't have known, it was the transformation that this place has taken in the last, 3 or 4 years is just phenomenal, like phenomenal. And I had never met Carl, but he was a very passionate, and he was proud to show us around. And it was very nice to see, a couple of things that he's worried about. Obviously, the beef market, but and hopefully Ellen's program that she talked about can help him, because he's having a hard time, getting employees, retaining employees. Did he have an H2A program? He had somebody, remember, from Burlington, but they couldn't afford the housing and the driving because they had to live in Burlington. So he's facing that as a real issue. And I think that he talked about maybe doing some trainings there and teaming up with somebody. I don't remember who he said he was going to team up with, and maybe Allison will. But he made, the second floor was all, boardrooms and places that you could have some great training and partner with people that way. And as Allison mentioned, it's all accessible to anybody. They have elevators. It's just an amazing place. And the other thing he talked about, Allison, that he was facing, was it a wastewater thing or something that he was having that could ultimately cost him way too much money? I think that's, Allison would probably, I don't want to speak, out of turn, but I think that those were his major things coming up, was the state permitting process for the wastewater, and retention of people, staying in the business. So that's all I had to add, if Allison agrees with that.
I just found the photo, Stephanie, of the outside when you pulled up and said you weren't certain you were in the correct spot. Yeah, he definitely talked a lot about labor and also the wastewater and their inability to expand, I believe, because of the wastewater situation currently.
Yeah, because he has to stay in the same footprint of what was there. And, he's, right now with the employee, he couldn't run at full capacity, right, Allison? Was that the main factor right now?
Yes,
yeah.
He has a lot more capacity, but it's reliant on employees, and then also the beef situation switching around. He does slaughter also pigs, and it's amazing to see the classroom that he's made. He envisions doing some training in the future. The classroom was on the opposite side of the building from what this picture is, but on the second floor, and a lot of light and windows looking outward in the southern direction. So he also mentioned that his business partner, Stephanie, his son, and also his business partner's son are next generation interested in ownership of the business. So that was good to hear as well. But very humble gentleman, and it's just been amazing to see what he's done and what he continues to want to do at his age. There's no talk of retiring yet. So yeah, he was great to follow around for the time that we were there.
Yes, for sure. And he did say, some of his partners are fully aware that it is not, I don't know how to word this, Allison, you can help me, maybe not feasible that he's ever going to pay back the investment, right? Is that a fair statement? And but his partners are fully aware and fully supportive of that, because of what they're providing for the industry. Is that a fair statement, Allison?
Yeah, that's what I got out of it. And he was not shy about sharing the fact that they went well over budget for this project. It was at a terrible time during COVID, and then also the those that were doing the construction had to work around them so they could continue to process. So that it wasn't like they shut down the facility, so it made it even more difficult for construction to happen. But he's very thankful to the Working Lands Enterprise
Very.
Initiative and the $100,000 grant, and also the federal money. He said that this wouldn't have happened without those funds. So
Yeah, he said this was definitely the starter of the project.
Thank you both for visiting and for sharing the update and the photos. It is really impressive. And I also, just in doing having conversations with them throughout the lifetime of the project, hope to visit someday and meet Carl, because I think he is a really humble and knowledgeable and motivated, passionate individual. That was always my impression. Yeah, we'll have to keep it would be good to keep in touch with him over some of the challenges and figure out how he and the business partners are navigating the wastewater permitting process, if that's going to be something that they have to do, and the challenges to housing. I mean, those are very common challenges, things that we hear pretty frequently from grantee businesses, that, access to housing is critical for retention of employees. But we are going to shift to administrative or administration updates because of timing. So I think we'll have to be quite high level today in order to receive a break before we shift into a conversation within Common. So if Oliver or Elizabeth or Allison want to kick us off.
I'll be happy to set the tone. I don't really have anything to share at this time.
Okay, well, that is truly brief. And then Allison or Oliver, unless there's questions, maybe let's hear all the updates, and then if there's time, we'll take a few questions.
Oliver, you wish to go?
Sure. Yeah, I can share a few updates from the perspective of FPR. I think the one thing that's been on our mind quite a bit is drought and wildland fire risk. There's a statewide ban on fire wardens issuing debris burning permits. That's still in effect. We were very close to issuing a ban on all fires in forest land, such as campfires. The governor has that authority under statute, but then a little bit of rain last week and then last 24 hours has prevented us from having to do that. And we are working on getting more, I guess, administrative setup in place and funding in place, or at least access to funds in the event that we do have a large scale wildfire, sort of on the scale of what Connecticut had last year. So that's been something that's been sort of taking up a lot of time within the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. Another thing that's pretty recent is at the federal level, the Congress continues to debate the Fix Our Forests Act, which is a piece of bipartisan legislation that would make it easier to engage in certain types of active forest management on federal lands, including the Green Mountain National Forest, with the goal of addressing forest health issues and reducing wildfire risk. Lots of varied opinions out there about this bill. What I can say is the National Association of State Foresters, of which Vermont is a member, supports the bill. And I believe it's in committee on the Senate side today, and I know Senator Welch is one of the key votes, so I'll be curious to see how Senator Welch ends up voting on that bill. I know he's been hearing a lot from Vermonters who's both support and oppose the bill. So I think those are a couple major updates that I'll share. I think we've been participating in the clean water budget process because we get funding to support the implementation of best management practices on forest roads, on state land, and also come up with bridge loan and bridge rental programs for loggers. And we're sort of pleased by the proposed figure for state fiscal 27 and the clean water budget. That's under public comment right now, and there'll be a hearing soon. And so we're trying to ensure that enough voices that support that use of funds, proposed use of funds, are able to make their voices heard at the upcoming Clean Water public hearing or provide comments through the comment process. And if anyone is interested in learning more about that and possibly lending their voice in support of that allocation that the administration has put forth to the board, I'm happy to give you more details on what's proposed and how you can support that. And then finally, I think kind of an exciting thing and pertinent to WLEB, we did receive $500,000 also from Clean Water funds to provide low interest financing for logging equipment that has a lower impact on soil compaction, soil erosion, and is thought to have a clean water benefit. And those funds were in the process of transferring to the Vermont Economic Development Authority, as Sarah is aware, to administer on our behalf. And that should reduce interest rates from about 7.5% to about 2 or 2.5% on eligible low impact logging equipment, which I think should be a game changer for folks in the industry who aren't able to take on loans for that type of equipment right now due to the high interest rates. This much lower interest rate should allow them to hopefully benefit from this program. This builds on an existing forestry loan program that Vita is already implementing. So we're excited about that, and I'm actually meeting with Vita later this week to go over the scope of work so we can transfer those funds to them. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Oliver?
Oliver, you may want to mention the updating of the current use rules process.
Yeah, sure. A couple of things just came to mind. I'll get to that, Alan, in a sec. We just completed 2 site visits with legislators, one to the Northeast Kingdom to look at the Weyerhaeuser lands where commercial timber sales are taking place, as well as a Kingdom Trails landowner who's combining timber sales under use value with also hosting recreation trails. And we had 5 different legislators participate in that. And then more recently, just late last week, we went down to sort of central and southern Vermont and visited both the Vermont Pellet Company's factory and a site where there had been some timber sales nearby that was organized by professional logging contractors and Vermont Wood Pellet. And we had, I think, 8 or 9 legislators, many from the Rural Caucus, come to participate in that. Those 2 visits. So those are great ways just to get the word out about the importance of active forest management and the connections with supporting the forest economy and promoting forest health in Vermont. To Alan's point, our private lands program is, I would say 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through an overhaul of the use value appraisal minimum standards for forest management, which are sort of encompassed in what we'll refer to as the UVA manual. And so this is a sort of an attempt to assemble lots of different changes that have been made to UVA standards over the past 10 to 15 years and build in a bit more sort of silvicultural best practice into our minimum standards for forest management. So we've been working real closely with licensed foresters as well as landowners to get feedback on that process that's been going on for, I think, almost 2 years. I remember in the fall of 2023, winter of 2023, early 2024, we had our first public meeting about that on a snowy day at the Canadian Club in Barrie, and so we've been working on it since then. But it's getting close to completion. We're working through a couple hundred comments that we received from both licensed foresters and landowners about those changes, and we hope to get the final version out for a last round of public review and then the commissioner's signature by the end of the year. That's this under statute, the commissioner has the authority to approve these standards, so they're not required to go through formal rulemaking, but we're using a sort of very similar public process akin to kind of the hearings that occur during rulemaking, just to ensure that everyone has a chance to understand the proposed changes and weigh in on them. And the Private Lands Advisory Council, which is a council that advises our team for forest management on private lands, particularly the use value appraisal program, has been very involved in steering those reforms as well. Hopefully, Alan, that addresses the point.
Thank you. Any other questions for Oliver? All right, so I'll be brief. Try to get us back on time. As far as ag goes, we did submit our budget, and I think Ellen had sent the message pretty strong that we all aligned on our budget asks. So we will remain in contact as to when we have knowledge of how that goes through. So it's the 1 million base plus an ask to increase the base to 1.5 and then 3.5 one time, and also the ability to retain Claire's position. And then just a quick note, we all know that we've been in a drought. It's been a terrible year. Farmers seeking, anywhere from 30% to 50% of their normal yields on crops, and no third and fourth crops in some counties. So we are currently in the midst of writing a letter, and it takes the Secretary of ACCD and also the Commissioner of Forestry and the Secretary of Ag to designate the disaster to open up VITA's Disaster Recovery Loan Fund, which is a $15 million loan fund that was seeded with $2 million of the uncommitted BGAP fund. So that's the hope to get that fund up and going. So we look forward to working with our partners at VITA on that. So stay tuned for more. When October comes, I think we all breathe a sign of relief at the Agency of Ag, and I know that Trevor Lowell, who's on from the Agency of Ag, definitely is breathing a sigh of relief that we all have survived another year of the Big E. So big accomplishment to all staff. There's many long days put in down there, vendors and staff trying to make the best of what we can at the Big E building. So good to have that in the rearview mirror and know that we can start planning for the next year. Yeah, so budgets are in. We'll know more hopefully in a couple months on where we land on that. So with that, do we want to take a break or do we want to keep powering through? You want to take a break? I see some head nods. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 11:05. Feel free to turn your cameras off. For those joining, we're taking a 5-minute break. Everybody will be back at 11:05. So that's why all the cameras are off. Thank you.
Hi, Aisha, Erica, and Curtis. Welcome.
Well, good to be here.
Everybody's coming back from a break, refreshed and ready to shift gears. We're having a few board members whose videos aren't functioning today, so, and others, I encourage you to come on video if you're able for this conversation. But I think without further ado, I will hand it over to In Common.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to have Curtis start today with some discussion questions, and then we will talk about the 2 surveys. Really appreciate everyone's feedback on that. But we can talk a little bit about the surveys as well as an outreach strategy for those. But I will pass it over to Curtis.
I actually thought we were doing the reverse. I thought we were starting with
Oh,
the
I think you're right.
survey. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we did
Yep.
switch that up. Okay, great. Well, let's jump into the surveys then. So I think everyone, lots of folks have already weighed in. Let me pop this in the chat just in case folks haven't seen it. But we essentially have 2 different surveys here. One is for working lands businesses and the other for service providers, TA providers, associations, etc. The first survey for businesses is for businesses, working lands businesses who have applied, either have received an award or haven't, as well as businesses who have never applied. So we have various, it'll be a branching survey, so you'll get sort of directed to questions that based on responses. So, you know, so the first one, it's a little bit hard to follow the branching survey. The second survey for the associations and service providers is kind of was a little, but we have a branching survey where essentially you'll be asked whether you've applied to the service provider and or association grants, and so there'll be some questions based on that. And then also we're trying to capture feedback from TA providers, etc., who have helped and assisted with applications. So there's sort of some branching. It looks sort of like a duplicate columns in some of those, but it's because we're sort of funneling it down a couple of channels. So yeah, we appreciated the feedback, already have gone through and started to make changes and accepted lots of comments. There's a few comments still in there. And perhaps, let's see. I think the only comment that would be, see, prizes and raffles was one suggestion, which maybe we can discuss after, Elizabeth, if we can have a little pot of money. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that, like a $200 gift card or $100 gift card or something. Or something on those lines is always a big draw to get people to fill out surveys. I added maple in for farms. A few folks gave that suggestion just to indicate it that's an ag product. Appreciate that. Alicia, your comment I really liked about the years, and it might be really interesting to see like which years people have applied. So I think we can maybe just put the years the application has been opened, and we can have like a checkbox for which year you've applied, and then, you know, and a no, I have not applied. So I think we can figure that out pretty easily. This was Donna. You had a great suggestion on, I do not think I would get a grant. It'd be interesting to learn more why. I mean, I think we have questions around, lots of questions around barriers and some open-ended questions there. So we may be able to get it through that. But we could also consider a question around, you know, trying to dig a little deeper on why they didn't apply. And then let's see.
Eric, I have one comment
Yes.
on that, and it's linked. I like the further down comment about the 1 to 10. Like, what's the greatest reason? I think that's applicable to the, if you did not apply, please indicate major reasons why, and letting it be a scale of like the biggest to the least. I think that could be helpful.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, skipping down to question 13, I do like I'm not sure who made that comment, but I do really like that. And Aisha, we could set that up just as a ranking for each of those pretty easily, I think. Either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and then you sort of get you get a response for everyone versus just check what's applicable. And so I think that actually is I think that's a great idea. And then, yeah, and then Susie, your question on, you know, do we want to know who they got help from? I think that the challenge there is it is like an anonymous confidential survey. So I think we probably can't ask that. Although if people feel strongly that they'd like to know who, I think we could do that, even if it is a confidential survey. So I'd love to hear for what folks feel about that, how folks feel about that.
I felt strongly about knowing the type of support received, which is, so I appreciate the question 10 that you added in, based on that comment. But I would like to hear what board members have to say about the specific, like knowing the name of the specific support received. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, what is the goal here? Are we trying to sort of ferret? Do we not like that people get assistance, or do we like that people get assistance, or what is kind of the end game of it? Is you could give people buckets to check, like I paid somebody, I got a support from a friend, I got support from this, but like the goal is like, do we want to encourage this, discourage this? Do we feel like we want to pair it with successful applications to know like, oh, we're only approving ones that are written by professionals? Or, it's just kind of what's the end game here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple end games, but all the points you brought up are very salient. So, I mean, you do ask in the application if it is being prepared by somebody else, but not necessarily if they received help, correct?
Yeah, I think that would sort of indicate that they received help because it was being prepared by.
But somebody theoretically could be submitting their own application and have received help, and you wouldn't know that, correct?
I think the biggest, yes, I think that's correct. I mean, just from my perspective on Alex's question, it's like it is the third point that's the most salient for me, which is like, what's the percentage of people that are getting help and being successful versus like the percentage that aren't receiving help and being successful, and like, is it going to be critical for us to provide more equitable access to help, right? Like, to me, so I don't know, maybe this isn't, like, to me, that's like a big question that we're gonna have to, that's in my mind. Like, right now, there is fairly equitable access to free project planning support. So through the Farm and Forest Viability Program, anybody can request some high level thought partnership, and we connect them with that. That's like through our partnership with Farm and Forest Viability, but we absolutely do not provide anything like that for grant writing, like grant navigation, web grants navigation. So I don't know, because we have the other question about like, what are the biggest barriers? Which sites, web grants navigation, grant writing. So that also could be to lead us to the same sort of information around how important assistance is. Like, I don't think this question has to be the only response to getting this data.
Yeah, I think in our original survey, when we had a longer list and we were trying to pare it back because it was, too many questions.
Too long, yeah.
We did have a question about, if you received support and you hadn't, would that have impacted your ability to apply? But
So yeah, if that feels like a more obvious question to getting the information around how critical support is, then I think we could switch it.
Anybody else have thoughts on how we sort of capture this? I think your thought about, it's the paid, or was it a friend, or was it a service from a TA provider you're already working with? That might be interesting. Whether they actually paid somebody directly, or if it was more of a service that they were, kind of getting as part of a free service, or just help from a colleague, friend, neighbor, family member. Would that be a useful question to add? Like, who did you receive help from, not like a specific name, but for general categories?
I do have a question regarding that and farm viability, maybe for Liz, and that is, would this be, is it actually free through farm viability, or is there a slight fee for that service?
That's a two-part answer, Sarah. We've been just acting as sort of a connector for really light touch, like someone to bounce ideas off of, talk through potential projects, like a couple hours max. And Callie just basically is sort of a go-between between people in our network who have capacity for that and Claire and Elizabeth. We also are working with a lot of people who are like enrolled in the full program, doing a whole business plan or transfer plan or something like that, who one of the things that they might be doing at the same time is looking at a working lands application. And we do, in some of those cases, end up providing some amount of support. But we really try not to like write someone's whole application at any point.
Right.
But that
some people do
happened for, yeah.
But some people do probably hire a grant writer in some instances, perhaps.
Yes, they do. We know of grantees that have hired a grant writer. And I also think that the examples from the Farm and Forest Viability Network business advisor support that I always highlight in the realm of equity is Liz, the business advisors that have done almost all of the web grants navigation, from application to reporting for specifically folks that English isn't their first language. Like they've been critical to the program reaching those businesses. That's my assessment.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to meet needs and we
Yeah.
always try to also focus on like the core business planning that the program needs to deliver. So it's kind of like a balance, but yes, that's definitely something we've done, would try to do in the past if it was a need, but can't offer that level like
To
across the
everyone,
board.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it does probably make sense to have a question around what kind of the type of, besides the, the specific like project planning support or preparing financial docs, kind of what type of like was the support in terms of um a grant writer, business planning support that helped with the application. So maybe we can develop a question with the agency and then
Because
kind
I
of just
getting to Alex's point, I do feel that that's only like the critical question in there is, to me, is like what type of support is the most did you like what type of support is the most important? Is it the project planning? Is it the grant writing? Is it the web grants like navigation? Like that's what that to me feels like the information that we would want to access out of a question. Not so much like, does that make sense?
like not so much what they received, but what's the most important.
Yeah, what would feel, which I think we do have. I'm not sure what we would do with the information of just like the type of support, the more detailed type of support that they received. I mean, I think we can do the analysis of like successful versus unsuccessful, right? Based on supports received.
Yeah, we can do a cross tab there. Okay. Well, it sounds like we want to dive a little bit more deeply into this. So, why don't we circle back, you know, with your team, Elizabeth, and we can kind of wordsmith a question just to make sure we're sort of hitting what we really want to be getting out of the question around TA support. We could do it a few different ways, but yeah, we can chat about it, and then if we want, we can send, the question. We're going to be putting this in a form too, so you can also kind of review it that way, which will make more sense, I think, when it's actually in a form with sort of a branching survey. So just for sake of time, and moving on to the service provider. Let's see. So there was a comment, shift to we eligible. There was a comment, shift to we pronoun for organization. So like our organization. Good catch. Versus my. Is that what that was, to say our organization instead of my? I think that was that. Yeah. And then I think that was actually it. I think there was no other really substantial comments on that survey. So hopefully that one is in good shape. And I guess that's kind of it. So we'll work on that TA question. Otherwise, we'll be getting these into a form. But the last thing before we move on to some discussion questions is, in terms of an outreach strategy, we'll be sending this to any service provider association that's applied, whether they, you know, received it or not, a grant or not. So there's lists there. But in terms of hitting a broader array of associations and TA providers that maybe haven't applied, does anybody have any outreach suggestions there? Elizabeth, I did put all the awardees into a spreadsheet, but I didn't have the list of any organizations that have applied that didn't receive it. So it might be interesting to look kind of
Yes.
at those lists and then perhaps sort of scan and look at, if board members could look at them and say, oh, like I'm noticing this organization has never applied, and maybe we could do some direct outreach. But any other thoughts on an outreach strategy? And in terms of and then for the businesses,
So
as
we
well.
were I mean, I can share with the board what Claire and I have brainstormed as far as distribution. We're planning on sending, it's going to be in the agricultural development newsletter on Sunday. And then sharing it with past unsuccessful applicants, with past grantees, and then also just the listserv. So there will be there can be some duplication, but and then some targeted outreach to specifically to PLC and what was the professional logging contractors, and we had identified another, which I'm forgetting right now. Claire, can you remind me? Because we really want to make sure we're capturing the forestry perspective, and have had some recent touch points with those organizations. So we're going to follow up with a individualized email, and then probably also like an individualized email to Liberation Ecosystems as being the primary organization that coordinates with BIPOC farmers, not foresters, in the state. So that's where we are. So it would be great to hear feedback on that brainstorm.
I think that's a great starting strategy. I'm wondering what needs to be in place to reach a conclusion on the incentive piece. Because I think, you know, often when we put these surveys out, we're reaching folks who have the most time or capacity to fill them out. And I think adding some sort of incentive will help broaden our survey participation.
I really do appreciate that comment, or that suggestion. I think it makes so much sense. And I know from experience with some work that we did with Farm First that it increased responses by 500% for the survey that Farm First was trying to do. So I think that's an example. Yeah. I think it really only stands for In Common and us to decide whose budget it's coming from, right? But I think we can maybe discuss that on, I mean.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. We'll figure it out. Terrific. All right. Well, I think our goal is to get out the surveys by later this week. So we'll be wrapping that up. I really appreciate all your feedback, and feel free to reach out if anyone has any other thoughts or ideas. But I'll pass it over to Curtis.
Thanks, Erica. I just wanted to ask Claire, I'm going to do a little bit of stage setting here, and then hoping we can divide up into 3 groups with Aisha, Eric, and I anchoring each one, and maybe staff distributing themselves. So groups of roughly 7 people, I guess, by the count here, 21. So I'm just going to say a little bit here at the start, and then we'll get into these breakouts, and then we're going to come back and debrief as a full group. And this is time that we've thought would be important for this board to continue to talk about what we initiated when we were with you all at Shelburne Farms, going deep on some of these questions of diversity, equity, inclusion, what that means in the Vermont context, what it means in the context of the board. We then had a follow-up conversation in this format with a smaller group that attended last month, where we got into some pretty juicy, interesting conversation about how you wade into these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in pretty charged environments. And that included lifting up specific parts of the state of Vermont and particular sectors where maybe bringing some of this language or work would be particularly challenging. And, since we last met, things have continued to happen, right? So we know Senator Douglas there in Vermont was called out for some unfortunate language that was picked up in a chat. So we know that some of that vitriol and hate is alive and well in places like Vermont, everywhere, essentially. We know that the tenor of the conversation at the federal level has just intensified. But we also know, and this was sent out, I think, as articles for y'all to perhaps take a look at in advance of this call. And if you haven't, I'm putting those in the chat. But there is some really good work that is being done at the state level and at the community level in different parts of the country to cut through the vitriol, to cut through the polarization and help people find common ground. And we've talked about this a little bit in the first training, the day long at Shelburne Farms. We picked up on that again at our last gathering. And so I guess what I wanted to ask, what you remember, what you know is key to helping dissolve distrust, help people work across difference and tackle challenging issues. What are some of the things that you know do contribute to our ability to do that? From your own experience or what you've read or what we've discussed. Feel free to put in the chat or just come off of mute. Say it one more time. What helps us to dissolve distrust, to work across difference, and to work on challenging or difficult issues? Yeah, Ellen.
I think a key is being respectful and not adding to the escalated emotionality that often is, and the fear that's often behind elevated reactions to things, like by not meeting that with like further and further escalation, and finding a way to actually connect at a human being level in like finding something that is similar, unites, whether it's a value or it's a like you have similar interest in doing something, like finding a way to just have that point of connection first and then being able to enter into conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So hearing that respect, not adding to the vitriol, finding points of connection wherever you can find them. Alex?
I think I often find myself, on a log landing in the woods, and I'm often think just being explicit about things. Just saying, hey, I don't really want to talk about the president or the government or whatever. I would like to talk about growing great trees and how we're going to grow them and harvest them. And like, that's kind of just like, hey, redirect. A lot of times people want to talk and you can kind of, let's direct it in this way.
Get to the work. Yeah, redirect. Donna.
Yeah, so when I run into other sugar makers in the Northeast Kingdom that I know have very different political views, we usually start by talking about the weather, because the weather is important to people who work the land. And it really gives us a common ground. And then from there we can move on and talk about other things. But
nice. So something y'all hold in common. The weather is a good one. Absolutely. Allison.
I think that face-to-face communication and the internet, it particularly like Facebook is not a substitute for, it's never really been a dialogue. It's just people, like-minded people taking their shared grievances, and acting like nobody's watching it, so there are no consequences. But when we all have to interact, with people with different viewpoints, there are guardrails, and it's not political correctness, it's just common courtesy.
Common courtesy. Yes. Thank you, Donna. I'm Allison, sorry. Liz, and then I'm going to move us on. Go ahead, Liz. You're on mute, Liz, if you...
Yeah. I find that like asking questions, I actually deal with this with my mom a lot, is like if you ask them and kind of find out where, if you find you can't deflect the conversation, like kind of understand where the origination of those thoughts are. Because I find with a lot of folks, it's not, they're regurgitating facts. They're not actually like backing them up. And so trying to figure out where that human element is, can either A, get you out of into that deflection point or understand them a little more.
Yeah, and hearing that, the human element comes up across a lot of the comments that you shared. So yeah, you know this from your own experience, and what sort of research and case studies show time and time again, and this is lifted up in some of what we've shared before and in the articles we shared, that kind of the three top things that help are proximity, like actually being close to the person, and generally in person is better, but it can happen on Zoom. Having shared values, something you care about in common, and also focal point on a shared resource can be really helpful as well. So identifying common resources that you have to navigate, manage together. Those three things come up time and time again. So with that in mind, we did want to put a couple of questions here in the chat for y'all to think about and to discuss in small groups. So we're going to do this for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and debrief. And this is really in the spirit of, we're all trying to figure this out in these times. And so there's having mentioned those points, there's not necessarily a prescription, like a plug and play kind of automatic thing that will make this work. We've still got to figure out what this means, particularly in Vermont and in the sectors in which you operate. And so two questions we wanted to have you first discuss in small groups, and then we'll debrief in the large group is, given what has been happening politically in our country and in the state of Vermont, what lines do you think it is important to draw, or stands it is important to take as a board, if any? So if any. The second is, where is your thinking now with respect to how WLEB can advance equity for all in its work, in all phases of your work? And here again, equity meaning that different aspects of one's identity should not be predictive of opportunities and outcome, right? If all members of X group, it's predictive that they will not have positive outcomes or opportunities, then that's when we're lapsing into inequity. So inviting you to a chat with one another. Erica will be in one room, Aisha in another, myself in the other, and we'll come back in 10 minutes and see where we get. Thank you, Claire, for setting that up.
Yep. Let me just set the 10-minute limit. And one of the rooms is like the main room, so some of you won't actually like move anywhere. But otherwise it should work. Alex, do you have a question before we move to the rooms?
Yeah, I just know you often lose the chat when you jump between rooms sometimes, so.
Yeah, I will create a new chat for you.
Take a screenshot or a mental image of the
Yes.
great questions.
I think I might still be able to access it. So. Okay.
Well, maybe the facilitators, Aisha and Erica, make sure you copy that, and we'll bring it into our rooms.
Elizabeth, can you move yourself to room 3? Otherwise.
So I assume we're all in the main room together.
Yeah.
Great. And do we still have access to the chat to review the questions. It looks like from my end, maybe we're lucky being in the main room that we do. So worked out, Alex. But we're fine at least. So yeah, I'm gonna really just be taking notes on the conversation because this is for you all to discuss and to share with each other. But let's start with the first question of what lines do you think it's important for?
We could just do a quick round, a taster of what was coming up, and then see what else people want to weigh in here with. Aisha, do you want to give us a quick taste of what was coming up in your room?
Yeah, I mean, I think working from what maybe you heard the tail end of Claire talking about, there was generally the discussion of, one, how do we just establish maybe a restatement of our commitments to equity or to like a rules of decorum, thought there in terms of what the board can do. And then that sort of dovetailed into, well, what are these lines for? Is the lines for the board, is the lines for the application? And I think what Claire was talking about brings up a good aspect of that, of a lot of the equity work done thus far has been sort of administrative level tasks, which feels difficult to like convey broadly, but also are the stepping stones that do build up into a more equitable process and system, and so are sort of the tangible effects of a commitment to equity. So yeah, just kind of navigating some of those different aspects of the concepts of the question. And anyone from the team, feel free to jump in.
Let me just ask Erica, give us a few highlights, and then we'll invite anybody in after you and I give some highlights. Oh, did Erica just disappear?
Oh no, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, I saw you, and
Yeah,
then I
and
didn't.
our group was talking a lot about, finding common ground, continuing that thread, and ways to kind of reduce polarization. And then also, what WLEB could potentially do, and thinking through, like, obviously the working lands itself is a broad tent that can help build a lot of common ground. And that was a very strong theme of our group. But that also, clearly some people have more access to the program than others. And so really trying to understand that. And then we also started to get on like a little bit of discussion around, reviewers, and, thinking through sort of that we all have we all have biases, some unconscious, and how we can think through, having reviewers be able to really think through those biases, and to have the most, equitable processes possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll just some similar themes coming up in our room. I think there was an interesting conversation around, passive board, maybe at one extreme, the other being maybe an activist board, and then maybe what does it mean to be an active board? It was what was kind of coming up for me. And the perils of being perceived as activist right now, either risking federal funding, state legal action, or community alienation. And then at the same time, wanting a kind of give people, the phrase that came up from one person was easy, genuine access to everything. That everyone should have easy, genuine access to everything. And that included not just relying on technology to get the word out. If there are people working the land, are they necessarily online? Are they, how do you get to those people? Yeah, and some questions about, this overly white board, not truly representative of everybody in the state, while the state continues to be majority white. And so what do you do with that in terms of appearance and access? So yeah, obviously still just skimming a little bit here, but want to just keep the conversation going. Any other things you want to bring up that were percolating in your small group or percolating right now?
I think you covered it well. Erica says she loves your easy, genuine access to everything, Alicia. That is definitely Alicia's speak right there.
anything that's coming up as an important continuation of this conversation, you think the board that needs to have knowledge that would be helpful to have, skillfulness that would be important to have? We talked about anti-bias, that came up in one group. I know a question came up around federal risks. What are the federal risks? And so maybe there's some information that can be made available to the group in terms of ties between state funding, federal funding. What are the actual risks from risk mitigation? What are the statutes that might be, it's getting clarity around those things. I remember in the time of all these executive orders flying from the federal, people were terrified. And then finally somebody said, do we even know what an executive order is and what its binding status is? So that kind of clarity can be super helpful for bodies like this. What is binding? What is truly risky? What is rhetoric, which can also be risky? Anything else coming up?
I put in the chat the fourth strategy of the board, which I think is a strategy that we're less actively engaged with than certainly than the first two strategies. And I think there's a part of this strategy that, is very much tied to the active board piece that we're talking about. And I think we've had different discussions at different times about like where to take a stance and where not to. And yeah. And I think this is tied to that, like to that like line of questioning.
Leaving it for another few awkward moments of silence if anybody else wants to get in, otherwise we'll wrap up. So hearing, we had already been thinking about the importance of anti-bias training, and I think some of these questions around, what is binding, what is truly risky, federal and state level would be important if that's not known by everybody on this body. And I think that the continued conversation about how to navigate this in different communities and how to stand for equity without it immediately being perceived as exclusionary will be, an ongoing conversation. Erica, Aisha, anything you want to wrap up with? No? All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So back to you, Elizabeth.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Curtis, Erica, and Aisha for joining and for developing the survey. I do want to, once the board will receive the survey, and we'd love, for you to make sure that, like, especially for folks that are working directly with businesses, if you're talking with businesses, ask them to weigh in. I mean, it's only going to be helpful if we get, a good response rate. Alex, if you could clarify your comment in the chat. Alicia had a question about your suggestion, and I would also like to understand it better. But other than that, we are exactly at time. Thank you everyone for being here, and I will hand it over to Allison to wrap us up.
Excellent. The only technical last piece we have is a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at noon.
Excellent. Thank you, Alicia. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Allison. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. You may all be dismissed. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.